The studio lights of Spotlight Tonight burned bright, casting a golden glow over the sleek, glass-topped table at the center of the set. The audience buzzed with anticipation, their murmurs blending with the low hum of cameras and the sharp click of heels on the polished floor. It was a typical evening at one of America's most watched talk shows, hosted by the charismatic but polarizing Julian Voss, a man known for his razor-sharp wit and penchant for pushing boundaries. Tonight's guest was none other than Emma Stone, the legendary Hollywood actress whose career spanned decades, from indie darlings to Oscar-winning epics. Her presence promised a night of glamour and insight, but as the cameras rolled, no one could predict the storm that was about to unfold. Emma, at 67, carried herself with the effortless grace of a star who had weathered fame's highs and lows. Her silver-streaked auburn hair framed a face still radiant with the intensity that had captivated audiences since her breakout role in La La Land. She wore a tailored navy blazer and a warm smile as she settled into the guest chair, waving to the cheering crowd. Julian, in his signature slim-cut suit, flashed a grin that was equal parts charm and mischief. The co-host, Sarah Lynn, a younger journalist with a reputation for diplomacy, sat nervously between them, sensing the undercurrent of tension that Julian's reputation always brought. "Emma Stone, ladies and gentlemen!" Julian's voice boomed, met with a wave of applause. "From Easy A to Poor Things, you've given us stories that define generations. Tonight you're here to talk about your new memoir, Behind the Frame. Welcome!" Emma nodded, her smile genuine but measured. "Thank you, Julian. It's great to be here." Her voice was steady, warm, but her eyes scanned the room, as if bracing for something unspoken. The interview began smoothly. Julian lobbed soft questions about Emma's memoir, a deeply personal account of her journey through Hollywood's golden age and her advocacy for mental health awareness. The audience laughed at her anecdotes about on-set mishaps, and Sarah chimed in with a light-hearted question about working with Ryan Gosling. But the atmosphere shifted when Julian leaned forward, his smile tightening into something sharper. "Emma, your book talks a lot about authenticity," he said, his tone casual but laced with intent. "You've built this image as Hollywood's sweetheart, the relatable star who's one of us. But let's be real, don't you think that's a bit calculated? I mean, you've been in the game for decades. Isn't that persona just a carefully crafted act?" The studio fell silent. The audience's chatter died, replaced by a tense hush. Emma's smile faltered, her fingers tightening around the armrest of her chair. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting to the control booth, where producers exchanged panicked glances through the glass. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression. "I don't think authenticity is something you craft," Emma replied, her voice calm but firm. "It's about showing up as yourself, flaws and all, whether the cameras are on or not. The memoir is about that, being honest about the highs and lows." Julian raised an eyebrow undeterred. "Sure, but let's dig deeper. You've been vocal about mental health, which is admirable. But some say it's convenient timing, jumping on the bandwagon now that it's trendy. Back in the 90s, when you were at your peak, you didn't talk about it. Were you just hiding that part of yourself to protect your image?" The question landed like a slap. Emma's jaw tightened, and her eyes, usually warm, turned steely. The audience murmured, some nodding, others shifting in their seats. A woman in the front row clutched her phone, already recording. Sarah tried to interject, her voice shaky. "I think what Julian means is, it's inspiring to see you open up now." "No, Sarah, I said what I meant," Julian cut in, his grin widening. "Emma, you've built a career on being likable. But isn't it true that you stayed silent on a lot of issues, mental health, women's rights, until it was safe? Some might call that opportunistic." The air in the studio thickened. Emma leaned back, her posture rigid, as if measuring her response. The producers in the control booth were frantic, one gesturing wildly while another hissed into a headset. "Cut to commercial!" But the director shook his head. No one wanted to miss what came next. Emma's voice, when she spoke, was low but carried the weight of decades in the spotlight. "Julian, I've spent my life telling stories that matter," she said. I've fought for roles that gave women depth, not just decoration. If I didn't speak publicly about my struggles back then, it's because I was surviving them. You don't get to judge the timing of someone's truth." The audience erupted in scattered applause, but Julian wasn't done. He leaned closer, his voice dripping with mock curiosity. "Surviving, sure. But let's talk about your family. Your daughter, Lila, has been open about her own mental health struggles. Some say you weren't there for her during your big career years. Is that why you're speaking out now, guilt?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine. Emma's face paled, her breath catching audibly. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, while the audience let out a collective murmur of shock. In the control booth, a producer muttered, "This is a disaster." The cameras caught every detail: Emma's trembling hands, Julian's smug expression, the nervous shuffle of security guards at the stage's edge. Emma stared at Julian, her eyes burning with a mix of anger and pain. For a moment, it seemed she might walk off. But then she leaned forward, her voice steady but laced with fire. "You want to talk about my daughter? You don't know her. You don't know me. And you sure as hell don't know what it means to carry a family through this industry while the world watches your every move." The studio was silent, save for the faint hum of the cameras. Julian opened his mouth, but Emma raised a hand, cutting him off. "You're fishing for headlines, Julian. But you're about to learn that some lines aren't meant to be crossed." The audience held its breath. Sarah stammered, Let's take a quick break." But the tension was palpable, the moment unfinished. What would happen next? Would Emma walk away, or would she fight back? The cameras lingered on her face, capturing the storm brewing in her eyes. What happens when a legend faces a provocateur who won't back down? Can dignity withstand the pressure of a live audience and a viral moment? Find out in part 2. The studio lights felt hotter now, their glare amplifying the tension that gripped Spotlight Tonight. The commercial break did little to ease the atmosphere. If anything, it gave the audience time to process the shock of Julian Voss's attack on Emma Stone. Backstage, producers scrambled, one barking into a headset, "We can't let this spiral," while another waved frantically at Sarah Lynn, urging her to steer the conversation. The audience, buzzing with nervous energy, whispered among themselves, some clutching their phones, already posting clips to X with hashtags like #SpotlightShowdown. Security guards hovered closer to the stage, their hands resting on their belts, ready for any escalation. As the show resumed, Julian leaned back in his chair, his smile unshaken, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Sarah, visibly rattled, tried to pivot. "Emma, let's talk about your work with mental health charities. It's been so impactful." But Julian cut her off, his voice sharp. "No, Sarah, let's not dodge the real stuff. Emma, you said I crossed the line. But isn't it my job to ask the hard questions? People want to know, were you there for Lila when she needed you, or were you too busy chasing Oscars?" The audience gasped, the sound rippling through the studio like a shockwave. Emma's face hardened, her hands gripping the table's edge so tightly her knuckles whitened. The cameras zoomed in, catching the tremor in her jaw, the fire in her eyes. Sarah tried again, her voice desperate. "Julian, maybe we should." "Sarah, stop," Emma said, her tone commanding but calm. She turned to Julian, her gaze unflinching. "You want to talk about my daughter? Fine. Let's talk about what it means to be a parent in a world that dissects your every choice. Let's talk about the nights I stayed up, wondering if I was enough for her, while people like you wrote headlines about my failures." The studio fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the room. A woman in the audience wiped her eyes, another nodded slowly, as if Emma's pain echoed their own. Julian shifted, his confidence wavering, but he pressed on. "So you admit you weren't there? That's what people are saying, Emma. They're saying you chose fame over family." That was the breaking point. Emma stood, her chair scraping against the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet studio. The cameras swiveled, the producers froze, and the audience held its breath. But instead of storming off, Emma stepped forward, her voice rising with a clarity that filled the room. You think you know me because you've read tabloids? She said, her tone cutting but controlled. You think you can sit there and judge a lifetime of choices? I've made mistakes, Julian. I've carried guilt heavier than you could imagine. But I've also fought for my daughter, for my family, for every person who's ever felt broken and didn't have a voice. My memoir isn't about fame, it's about surviving. And you don't get to cheapen that for a soundbite. The audience erupted in applause, some standing, their cheers drowning out the hum of the cameras. Sarah's eyes glistened, and even the producers, still panicked, seemed moved. Julian, for the first time, looked small, his hands fidgeting on the table. He tried to respond, his voice softer now. I'm just doing my job, Emma. People deserve the truth. The truth? Emma shot back, her voice steady but laced with emotion. The truth is that people like you thrive on tearing others down. But I've spent my life building stories, hope, change. And I won't let you reduce that to a cheap headline. She sat back down, her posture regal, her eyes locked on Julian. The studio was electric, the moment raw and unscripted. Sarah, seizing the chance to regain control, stammered. Let's give it up for Emma Stone, everyone. The applause swelled again, but Julian's silence spoke louder. Security guards relaxed, sensing the crisis had passed, but the producers were already bracing for the fallout. As the show cut to its final commercial, the moment went viral. Clips flooded X, with users divided. Some praised Emma's dignity, others defended Julian's. Tough journalism. Headlines screamed, Emma Stone shuts down talk show host. And Spotlight Tonight's explosive clash goes viral. The debate raged online, with older audiences resonating with Emma's defense of privacy and younger ones questioning whether Julian had a point. In the days that followed, Emma's memoir soared to the top of bestseller lists, her raw honesty striking a chord with readers, especially those over 55 who saw in her a reflection of their own battles for respect and dignity. Julian, meanwhile, faced backlash. Some called him a provocateur who'd gone too far, others admired his boldness but questioned his tact. He issued a half-hearted apology on X, claiming he meant no harm, but it did little to quell the storm. Emma, ever the professional, declined to comment further, letting her work speak for itself. At a charity event a week later, she spoke briefly about the incident, saying only, "We all have moments where we're tested. What matters is how we stand up." Her words, simple but profound, became a rallying cry for those who valued integrity over sensationalism. The Spotlight Showdown, as it came to be called, sparked a broader conversation about the role of media in an age of instant outrage. Was Julian wrong to push so hard, or was he exposing a truth that needed airing? Was Emma's response a triumph of dignity or a refusal to face hard questions? The debate lingered, resonating with an audience that understood the cost of living authentically in a world quick to judge. What do you think? Did Emma Stone do the right thing by standing her ground, or do journalists like Julian have a right to ask the tough questions? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that challenge, inspire, and provoke. The Spotlight Showdown left an indelible mark on those who witnessed it, both in the studio and across screens worldwide. Emma Stone's unflinching stand against Julian Voss's provocations was more than a clash of personalities. It was a testament to the power of dignity in the face of scrutiny. Her refusal to let her life's work and personal struggles be reduced to tabloid fodder resonated deeply, especially with those who have navigated their own battles for respect and authenticity. The story reminds us that true strength lies not in silencing critics, but in rising above them with grace and conviction. For an audience over 55, Emma's journey mirrors the universal struggle to protect one's values in a world that often demands conformity or sensationalism. Her courage to speak her truth, even when it trembled with vulnerability, underscores the importance of honoring personal boundaries and the sanctity of private pain. The lesson is clear: dignity is not just a shield but a legacy, one that inspires others to stand firm in their principles. This story's value lies in its call to reflect on how we engage with other stories, whether we seek to understand or exploit. It challenges us to ask, how do we balance the pursuit of truth with respect for humanity? What would you do in Emma's place? Share your thoughts and let's keep the conversation alive.